Boogardi State Battery commenced operation in 1903 and operated right up to May 1989. Over its life, it treated over 190,000 tonnes of ore for a return in excess of 113,000 ounces of gold bullion, a value of 73 million at its closure. The main battery building is shown on the left, with the workshop on the right. Moving to the other side of the main battery building, we see the bucket conveyor and ore bins. The processing of the ore began when the truck with its load of ore arrived at the state battery, where it would be driven onto a set of scales to be weighed. The ore was then tipped into the road hopper bin, and the truck would then be weighed empty so that the tonnage of ore delivered could be calculated and recorded. The ore was then fed into a small jaw crusher to reduce the rocks to a manageable size for feeding into the stampers. From there, it was then picked up by a bucket conveyor and lifted up to the ore bin splitter. The ore bin splitter then directed the ore into one of the two storage bins. The following truckload of ore may have come from another mine and would be directed into the other storage bin. This enabled the processing of ore from two different mines to be processed simultaneously. The ore was then gravity fed from the storage bins by feed chutes to the challenge adjustable ore feeders that control the amount of ore being fed into the battery box and stampers. This view from the front of number 2 battery shows the main bull wheel, and panning down, the number 2 battery box with screens removed, exposing the 5 stampers. This clip shows the lifter cams operating the collets on the lifter stems that are connected to the stampers below. Water is continually pumped through the battery box when the battery is operating, and as the stampers pulverise the ore, the fine particles are splashed and washed through a fine wire screen onto a splash plate, and then onto the amalgam table. A choice of different size mesh screens are used depending upon how fine the miner requires the tailings to be. The splash plate and the amalgam table are both faced with copper, and these are coated with thin film of mercury. As the slurry flows over them, the gold sticks to the mercury surface. Once the gold is trapped in the mercury, it's called amalgam, and when the stamping is complete, the amalgam is scraped off the copper surface using rubber scrapers and tin scoops. By the time the slurry reaches the end of the amalgam table, most of the gold has been captured, and the slurry is directed to the sampler. Each sampler had a water wheel that drove a revolving scoop which picked up a small sample on each revolution from the slurry as it flowed out to the tailings pump and onto the tailings dam. At the end of each shift, the sample bucket is tipped into a splitter that divides the slurry into 4 samples. One is sent to an assay laboratory for analysis, and if the sample contained more than 3 pennyweights of gold per tonne, the prospector would receive a credit for the excess payable when the tailings were eventually reprocessed, if ever. A sample is given to the prospector who could seek his own analysis, and a sample would be sealed and placed in the battery manager's safe in case of any disputes. The Boogardi State Battery was powered by a Crosley horizontal single-cylinder engine. Compressed air was used to start the engine, and the operator used a crowbar to turn the large flywheel until the marks on the camshaft lined up for the starting position. The compressed air was then turned on to start the engine. This engine was rated at 67 brake horsepower and ran at 260 revolutions per minute. It powered the battery for close to 80 years. In the last few years of the battery's operating life, it was replaced by a 30 kilowatt electric motor that powered the plant through a reduction gearbox.